We're live.
What's up?
All right, podcasters. ready to fry your brain today? No, actually, it's not that difficult. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually dummy this down, make it like super simple for everyone. Because, you know, I was on a call, Chris, last night with one of our docs who just graduated from the program and from the TCP podcast training program. And he said, yeah, there was a little bit of sweat equity in the beginning, but now he's posting episodes to his all these different accounts where you can actually get your information out there, your audio, and he's doing it in 30 minutes max. That's incredible. Imagine that. Dr. Jason, yeah. Awesome. So we want to make this really simple. Yeah. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is actually go ahead and start with a screen share. How's that sound, Chris?
Hey, I'm all for it.
Okay.
I don't know. You know, they might miss seeing this beautiful face, though. I don't know.
I look like I got like lights bearing down on me. So let's get away from my face for a sec here. Okay. Can everyone see that? Okay. Hopefully.
Yes, I can see it on my end. So
okay. Perfect. Thanks, Chris. Okay. So TCP podcast training. So this was an idea that was born out of a podcast that I created, which was the Chiropractic Philanthropist. And the original idea for the Philanthropist was simply to create a podcast to get some information and content out to docs, to support docs, not just within, you know, my circle of influence, but, you know, worldwide. And I thought that I would interview, you know, some...
Hey, Dr. Ed, real quick. We just got a message that said there is no sound.
Hold on. This is how webinars go, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's the beauty of being live.
How we doing, Chris? You got it?
Yes, we're good.
Okay. So long story short, I created a podcast and there's lots of people listening. And and I thought, okay, you know what? Not only is this, you know, incredibly effective in terms of getting your message out there, but how can we help chiropractors actually, you know, step up and get their message out there, use podcasting. And we're going to go through some of the stats today as to where this technology is going. And it's something that everyone has to be doing. I mean, honestly, we as chiropractors, as a profession that is so freaking marginalized, until we start doing, you know, making the choice to step out of our own community and the 15 people that we influence, nothing is going to change. And clearly we have been doing things not exactly the best for a long time. So podcasting is one of those avenues to change that, because not even if you're putting YouTube videos out there, there's only people who are going to consume audio content, especially on their mobile. Okay, who am I? I'm Dr. Ed Osborne. I'm the Chiropractic Philanthropist, and I created a podcast, and then I created a business behind it to actually teach chiropractors in an easy, simple way to get their message out there and reach not just a couple people in their community, but thousands. Who are you, Chris?
Hey, I'm Chris Burfield. I am a marketing strategist. Actually owned my own clinic for about 7 years. Started off as a chiropractic assistant. Now I teach marketing to chiropractors full time.
And Chris is killing it too. And I mean, this is why I brought him on board. But not only that, he was a client.
Yeah, absolutely. I started Market from the Heart. I actually started a podcast before I attempted to start a podcast before I even met Dr. Osborne. And totally screwed it up, totally. And then after talking to him, he was like, oh no, dude, like here, I've got this training course, and I went through the course, and my podcast Market from the Heart has just been exploding.
Yeah, and we actually basically relaunched your podcast, and yeah, it killed it from the beginning. And that's the way that it needs to be. Is there's a certain synchronicity of steps that need to happen to make sure that you're harnessing not only the listeners and the loyalty of listeners out there, but you're also harnessing SEO, so search engine optimization. Because let's face it, docs, ultimately at the end of the day, you can have an amazing podcast, but the point is it has to funnel new people into your office. And that way you're affecting more people in your community, and you're establishing yourself as the authority. Now, some of you may already be the authority out there in your community. Great. Your podcast is going to even up that authority even more. And even if you're just getting 1 to 5 new people who are starting care per month based on your podcast audio content, that's incredible amount of value. Chris, wouldn't you agree that if VJ was here today, he'd be podcasting?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what, and you and I kind of, and you might talk about this later, but you and I even talked about just how, how powerful podcasting is. And think about how many times do you have an opportunity to get in front of an audience and speak to them every single day? Like, it just does. I mean, unless you're doing, a dinner workshop once a week or once every couple of weeks or something like that, or you're going to a speaking engagement once a week. Podcasting gives you the ability to get in front of people every single day. And BJ would totally be doing that.
He would do both. And here's the thing too, is that I did that. I had a rock and busy practice that was built on two main things. And one was actually screenings, spinal screenings. And the other was corporate lectures in my community. But I got to tell you, there was a lot of they were a huge time suck. And it wasn't that I didn't enjoy them, because I love spreading the message, but there was a lot of time that was involved. Here's the beauty of podcasting. You could record one of your lectures and you can put it on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, and I'm going to define all of those terms for you soon, Doc. You can put them all out there and they're evergreen. So all you got to do is just basically send that link to your patient, send those links. You could even SMS, you could text message your podcast to someone. And Chris, what's the percentage of open rate on text messages these days?
Like 98%. Like, think about it. When you get a text, when you hear that ding on your phone or whatever soundbite you have, it's like you're running to it to see who just texted me.
Yeah. And here's a screen capture that I took of recent, TCP podcast graduates. So the reason that we're actually taking on, because we've actually opened enrollment again into TCP podcast training, is because one thing, and I got to tell you, everyone, I was a little naive when I started this program because I didn't realize how much support people would need. And I'm not talking about the tech, because the program speaks for itself. It's solid. But when it comes down to creation, everyone wants a lot of feedback. So there was a lot of back and forth, tweaking and creation. But look at here, we've had about at least 10 doctors podcasts graduate in the last few weeks, which means we're going to accept 10 more doctors only for enrollment through this program today. So Chris, if you want to pop up the offer, you can do that now. So anyone who wants to get in, we've already did the launch 6-8 weeks ago. We had over 80 doctors come on board now for this movement, because this is a chiropractic podcast movement. And I'm not, what the screen share I'm showing you, Doc, is not from the bottom of iTunes. This is new and noteworthy, the top of iTunes. And it was amazing to get this screen capture and see that, 4 of our chiropractors, our, colleagues, are killing it in iTunes.
And the cool thing about that, Dr. Ed, is that they hit new and noteworthy within a week of launching their podcast.
Yep.
And that's absolutely huge. And and just to comment real quick, imagine, guys, if you were looking at that screen right now and every single one of those positions was a chiropractor. What would that do for the chiropractic profession? Obviously your office, it positions you as an authority figure, creates celebrity status. You're able to get your unique message out. But think about what it would do for chiropractic if that whole thing was nothing but chiropractors.
Yeah. And and here's the thing too, is that it doesn't happen for everyone, right, Chris? We have a 5-step formula. So when you launched your podcast originally, the one that sucked, you didn't, right? But hey, man, I sucked at first too. You didn't go into the top of iTunes.
No,
right?
not at all. No, not at all.
We have a 5-step formula that pretty much guarantees we're going to get you a new and noteworthy, and then we can we can keep you there for about 8 weeks. So yeah, that's build your list.
My podcast was in it, because people might be wondering, where's Chris's podcast? I was actually in new and noteworthy as well. I hit it within days and was there for about 8 weeks, like Dr. Ed said, and then I moved into what's hot. So, but yeah. Absolutely amazing.
Chris, did you pop up that offer as well?
Yes, I sure did.
Great. So any doc who wants to jump on and make sure that they get into the program now in the enrollment, they can actually click on that offer where I think it says, get access now or something like that. Click the yellow button. It's going to redirect you over to a page where you can actually funnel through a couple testimonials and things like that, some information on the program, and then you can actually click and get the program today. It's only $725 versus the $999. So we're going to do that for the next 10 enrollments. And also we are offering, for the first time only, we're offering actually production. And I'm a little nervous when I say that, Chris, because Chris and I are going to take on 6 doctors. And the thing that we hear often is docs will say, I love it. I want this. How do I do it? And then they'll say, well, I just don't have time. And, we are on a mission. We're on a mission to fill iTunes and Stitcher with chiropractic podcasts. And we're going to change, we're going to bring chiropractic to the world. So, we're going to take on 6 clients only. We're going to produce their podcast for them. And I'm going to cover the details on that later, but we're only going to, again, take 6 docs on for that. And there's some information on the sales page too. You won't be redirected from the webinar, hopefully, if you click on that. So here's just recently the people that have actually launched their podcast with us. And I want you to notice something here, viewers, everyone who's on this webinar is, don't these look amazing? Didn't they do an amazing job? Now, not all of the artwork was actually this good when they started, but we go through a process with our community of chiropractic podcasters, and we tweak them until they're this good. And I got to tell you, I'll tell you a secret, one of our 5-step formula. iTunes places new and noteworthy, podcasts and new and noteworthy based on aesthetic, based on what their podcast artwork looks like. Okay, so I just gave one of those things away for everyone. All right, so let's see, let's continue. So let's go over a little bit of stats. So if you asked anyone out there, listeners or viewers, hey, have you ever heard of a podcast? Probably less than half of those people are going to actually say yes, or they'll say, what is a podcast? Chris and I hear this all the time. Now, some of you might go, well, then that just kind of limits the amount of people that you can affect. No, there's over 700 million subscribers to iTunes. Subscribers means that when someone is a loyal listener and they subscribe to your podcast on iTunes, it automatically downloads to your mobile every time you upload a new podcast to iTunes. How powerful is that? That also means that if only, half of people know even what a podcast is, it has limitless potential. So we are just scratching the surface here. And now the interesting thing is too, if you look at some of the statistics, the average podcaster or podcast consumer, the listener, actually makes more than $75,000 US per year. So these are the people that we want. These are your ideal patients, okay? And if we look at even some of the statistics here, it's actually, if you look at AM/FM radio, podcasting consumption is almost surpassing AM/FM radio in terms of consumer being consumed, I should say. This is why you need a podcast, doc. And I say that because you do need one, because it would, like, if it was 10 years ago and I came to you and you said, hey, do you have a website? And you said, no. I would say, well, dude, you need a website. It's going to be exactly like that. Ford is already installing Stitcher, one of the podcast listening programs or platforms, into their vehicles already. And we know that all the other ones are going to be installed, and the manufacturers are installing podcast platforms into their vehicles as well, starting this year. Wouldn't that be amazing if you know that your patients, like, you can keep that intimate connection between a patient that you haven't seen for 3 weeks, and they're consuming your information, they're hearing your voice, they have that intimate relationship with you because they're hearing you even on their way to work. And they're hearing your message of health and healing. So here's my promise to you. What we're going to learn today is I'm going to show you a little bit about how to format a podcast. I'm going to give you just enough that you can get into trouble. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our program as well, because there is a right way and a wrong way to do this, and we want to make sure that you're doing it right. We're going to make sure that you get that mega visibility and that instant authority there's nothing like a podcast. Hearing your voice gives you that intimate connection with people versus, say, a webinar. And this is going to translate into a few things. It's going to mean you're going to see more people walking in your door. You're going to have more patients, so more revenue. And certainly it can improve your retention. I mean, how many people do you lose connection with, yet you can still communicate with them, you know, through your podcast, so that they still think of you as their chiropractor, their go-to. Even if, you know, we've all had this, even when they're gone for 3 months or they disappear for a year, you can still keep that relationship. You know, if we look at some of the stats, you know, even from my show, you know, I built a Facebook fan page. It's over 2,500 doctors are on it. I'm at over 130, so I think over 135,000 downloads now. I don't know, Chris, how many chiropractors are out there? What, 70, 75,000?
Yeah, I'd say probably on a good day, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, so you can have the same effect on your community, Doc. You can actually have tons of people consuming your content and building you as the authority via podcasting.
And one of my personal coaching clients, Dr. Joe Hudak, he has a podcast called The Journey to Wellness, which I think people might have seen him there on iTunes and New and Noteworthy. Ed, he's got thousands of listeners tuning in every week. Thousands of downloads to date. Probably, I'd say maybe a couple hundred, 200 to 300 per week. But here's the cool thing about it is that 63% of his audience is in his community in Edison, New Jersey. He's being heard in 13 different countries across the world. I mean, how amazing is that when you think about it? I mean, think your message is a global message of chiropractic, but you can market it in a way that the large majority of your audience is in your hometown. So every week he's actually getting in front of hundreds of people every single week and giving his message.
Yeah, it's crazy. Again, it blows my mind to think where I was, because I was speaking to a doc on on Skype last night, and he goes, "So you've only been doing this 7 months?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "That's crazy to think, you're on the phone with Jack Canfield or John DeMartini."
Right.
There's no reason why more chiropractors can't do this. I mean, this is where we really need to make that shift if we are ever going to take our rightful place as the go-to health professional in our community. But ultimately, and I've talked to doctors who come on my program, ultimately at the end of the day, it has to be about getting people under chiropractic care, because that's where the transformation happens, helping people with our hands. But if people don't understand what we do, if they don't know who you are, that will never happen. I mean, if you look at my website, The Chiropractic Philanthropist, we get over 4,500 visits per month. So, Doc, if you're out there, imagine how many, I don't know if you look at your Google statistics, but how many visits do you have to your website per month? See, we can actually use a podcast and we can actually up your SEO ranking so that when people Google chiropractic Tulsa or chiropractor Tulsa, that you show up, and not only your website shows up, but your podcast shows up. And then you can actually harness, or people can click on that and listen to your voice, click on your website and book or schedule an appointment. It's so powerful. So I get messages from docs all over the world, just saying, how helpful and how, the podcast actually is for them, how it's actually transformed them in their practice. And the reason I show you this is not to impress you. I want to impress upon you, Doc, that if you're watching this or listening to this content today, that you can have the same effect on people and their health in your community. You can help people get off of drugs. Certainly all drugs are pretty much unnecessary. You can help them become more healthy, certainly improve their family's health. So all of these things are a positive side effect, you could say, of podcasting. All right, so I want to get into the training. So before I do, I want to open this up to a couple questions. And we have a chat here. Has anyone got any questions specifically so far over just the content, not the training yet, but just the content that we've covered so far?
I did have a question. I thought maybe you could try and answer here real quick, Dr. Ed. This one is from Dr. Amy. She wanted to know, besides the training, what's generally needed for podcasting success? I guess she's talking more from like a marketing standpoint. I can tell you, Dr. Amy, that with Dr. Joe Hudak and some of the other clients that I have that I'm producing podcasts for, which Dr. Ed had mentioned that earlier about he and I producing podcasts for people. We're doing it organically. I mean, obviously you can spend some money on Facebook ads and stuff like that. But what I've been doing with my clients has been organic, and they're seeing big success. Main thing is like we do email marketing. So we'll blast out an email to the patient base. They listen to it, they subscribe, they share it, and then the listenership starts to grow. We post it to Facebook, same deal. They share it, the listenership starts to grow. So there are some things you can do to pay to get your message out there, but there are a lot of things you can do organically as well that don't cost you anything.
Absolutely. And I can see Dr. Amy has a question. So I'm going to answer that too. She's saying, how much is the investment generally besides the school? Well, the training is $725. But here's the thing, editing software, and I'm going to cover a lot of this for you. Editing software is nothing. Okay, it's free. There's a little bit of an investment for equipment, and I recommend that everyone start out really, with the lower end. I'm using a $90 mic right now. I have a $300-400 mic, and I actually prefer the sound on this one. So there is a bit of an investment. Maybe, Chris, would you say maybe $300 at most? You could even do it less than that.
Yeah, I think I actually did it less than that. Well, actually, let me back up because I did have an intro and outro produced and stuff like that. But you can get those fairly inexpensive as well, like on Fiverr. I paid a little better quality, I guess. But I know like Dr. Kerry Sigafus, I think he paid $50 for his intro and outro to his podcast on Fiverr. But I'd say probably $200 maybe.
Well, and I show even on the training how you can create your own intro, outro. And a lot of podcasters, some of the most successful podcasters who are getting hundreds of thousands of downloads per month, have no, like they just have like a musical intro, which is 99 cents for royalty free music off of iTunes. And I show how to make your own intro, outro. It's really not a tough thing. But again, you can jazz it up and spend the extra money and have something that's more professionally made. It just really depends on how you want to do it. Again, this is all about you. That's the fun thing, isn't it, Chris? Is when doctors start going to the creative process and they start going, here's what I would like to do. And it's so fulfilling for us to watch them go through that process and then launch and see what they come up with, because everyone's is so different.
That's what I think it was Dr. Amy had asked earlier too about redundancy. She said you see a lot of websites out there, chiropractic websites, and they're all the same, right? So there's no uniqueness to them. She wanted to know, is podcasting kind of the same? Do you teach people how to not so that their podcast is not redundant, that they're doing the same thing as this guy or this girl? Yeah, that's the cool thing. You have your own unique message, and you can design your podcast however, for example, if you just wanted to focus on childhood, children and ear infections in chiropractic, you could just focus on something like that. Or you could do like Dr. Joe Criscuolo, where he interviews somebody, he'll take a doctor that maybe has this awesome case study of a patient that came in with this particular problem, maybe like autism, and he'll interview the doctor, and then he gets that doctor to line up the patient where he does another interview with the patient, and he plays them back to back. So he'll interview the doctor and then he'll interview the patient right after. So you get to hear the patient's perspective from it. And it's so cool here and stuff like that. But you really see, the creative juices start flowing, and every podcaster that's graduated from TCP, none of them have the same podcast. It's completely different because everybody's unique and they have their own unique message.
Yeah, no doubt. Actually, Chris, I just want to let viewers know, I'm just checking on my other, I think we've had about 3 people already jump on the program. One doc actually messaged me through Skype and bought before we even start, right on the nose.
Oh. Yeah, I know. I remember you saying that. So we got 7 spots available.
We have 7 left, just so everyone has the heads up. Okay, so yeah, and I love what we're talking about here too, because it reminds me of a story of when I launched back August 30th of 2014, so not long ago. And I had a chiropractor and we were communicating back and forth, and it turned out we both had a very similar podcast we were launching, like almost identical, different names and everything. And I was really struggling with this, and I was going to my mentorship group, and I was like, you know what, I think I'm going to toss this idea. I can't do it. It doesn't seem like something that it just, someone's already going to do it. And we were both launching around the same time. And it didn't matter. Everyone who was an experienced podcaster said the same thing. And they said, it doesn't matter whether you have similar content or whether it's same flow. You will always approach conversation differently. No one has the same conversation. And they were absolutely right. I mean, he has his audience. I have my audience. And you will always have your audience. Yeah. So let's get a little bit into the training. The first step most people want to know about is, how do I go about actually creating a podcast? And I start with, first thing is, what are you passionate about? So you need to decide, what is it that you want to speak on? And this is the same as, if you go into a presentation, what is your keynote talk? You want to also talk to your expertise. And Chris already touched on this. Do you want to focus on a niche? Do you want to talk simply about, okay, I want to attract more children. I want to attract more moms. Do I want to talk about nutrition? I mean, it's endless, isn't it, Chris? I mean, as to how many things that are out there that you could just niche down and actually speak on and become that expert on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then also you want to define your avatar. Now, when I talk about avatar, that means like, it's just like in your office, the ideal patient, but it's who's your ideal listener. And I don't mean your demographic. So, 30 to 50, female, I want you to get right down to the niche of like, they're 32 years old. It's a mom. She handles all the finances and makes all the decisions for health in her family. She's struggling with her own, get really defined, get as specific as possible so that every time, it's called speaking to one, but talking to many. So every time that you get on your podcast, you're speaking to that person. Okay. And that's where you build your listenership. When people start thinking that you're talking directly to them but you're talking to many. And that is one of the secrets to podcasting. And then certainly write it down. I think I have 3 journals sitting in front of me right now I'm working off. So I write everything down. I make copious notes, even when I'm doing interviews. Write it down, keep, changing your idea. I even had a doc who's on our program, Chris, who sent me a message today, and he's kind of like changing things up on his podcast. That's the great thing about podcasting. We don't stay the same. Like, we change as people. So you can just change your podcast as it goes too. It's expected. So in terms of naming your podcast, what is it about? You certainly want to have a name that would reflect that when people see your artwork, obviously mine, The Chiropractic Philanthropist, it's all about giving back. So it's pretty self-evident. And then you want to also, see, who is your not your demographic, but your avatar. See that when they see your artwork, they go, okay, well, that's interesting. I want to click on that and start to listen. And then you start to build that relationship. In terms of artwork, really easy to get the work done. You can go to Fiverr and have it done for $5 or $10. Chris, you had yours done on Fiverr, did you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it took I had it done, and I think it was like the second or third revision where we kind of nailed it down and got what I wanted. So so it was like $10, I think, because it was really only $5, but I paid the extra $5 to have it done in 24 hours. So super cheap.
Cool. And I think Arthur actually has a question about, and he also has a high intensity exercise studio. Great. I mean, that's the thing about podcasting is, if you want to have something that, if you want to create a podcast to promote, because let's face it, any podcast that is created, ultimately you're promoting something. There's not a lot of people who make money directly off of their podcast, but they will make money promoting something. So they build a following. And I can't remember what the percentage is, but it was quite high that once you have that listenership, those are the people who tend to buy your product. Let's face it, chiropractors, we have a product, and that is chiropractic. So your listeners, when they do decide, hey, I'm going to go check out a chiropractor, you will be the person that they go to. New and noteworthy. I kind of mentioned that already. My artwork, by the way, is off Fiverr. It cost me $10. New and noteworthy. We already discussed, one of the secrets to getting into new and noteworthy is having good artwork. So to get feedback, what you need to do is we have that 80 doctors on my on the TCP podcast training. It's a closed group on Facebook. So once we have artwork created, we post it there and we get feedback. That's been so amazing. We get tons of threads of people giving amazing feedback, and that's how we tweak and torque the artwork so that it is basically to perfection. But we also do that for pretty much everything, Chris? Like even when docs want to test something, if they have questions, the community has been amazing.
That community is probably the most valuable part of all of this. It's because it really, it's instant feedback. So whether it's your artwork or you have an idea for an upcoming podcast, like you can throw it out there and say, hey guys, I was thinking about doing this. What do you think? And just, you get that instant feedback from the group, which is just priceless in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It can help prevent you from making errors.
Absolutely. And I love what you're saying here about making errors, because we talk a lot about failure and errors, but here's the thing. It's not a bad thing to make errors, but when you're creating a podcast, it actually is not the best, because you want to make sure that you're set up properly. But I had a doctor too, and what he just kept getting rejected and rejected every time that he was sending, trying to submit to iTunes for approval, because you only have to submit once. We'll talk about that in a moment. But once you submit to iTunes, then every time you load a new podcast, it goes automatically to iTunes. iTunes is just like a big search engine. So anyways, he kept getting rejected and he couldn't figure out why. So finally, he gave me his Libsyn account, which again, we're going to talk about in a second. That's your podcast hosting, which costs only about $15 a month, doctor. And so I went in, I looked at his account. I figured it out in 2 minutes, 3 minutes flat, created a screen share, sent it back to him. He fixed it. He was approved within, 2 or 3 hours. So that was actually even when I was on holiday. So what I want you to know is you have complete lifetime access to my program, including all updates and support. Okay. So if you're ever concerned or worried about, the tech, don't worry. Either if I'm not there to help you, Chris is there, or someone else in the community has been through it and they can help you with it too. Although it's very, very rare. Yeah. I do want to talk about consistency. You don't want to change your artwork. You don't want to change your branding and things like that. Don't get paralyzed. Yeah. So this is actually me and my son. We tried to build a snowman this winter, and and it sucked.
Nice snowman.
I know, it's terrible, right? And I want you to know, I had no broadcast experience when I started this. Okay. First couple shows, I remember in the middle of the show apologizing to my guests, saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry," but I would edit it and make it better in the end. So yeah, everyone gets better the more podcasting they do, and some people just are naturals, but it is a muscle. It's something that everyone can learn. No one is great at the start. So Project Snowman, yeah, I didn't nail it, but you'll get better as you do it. Don't get paralyzed. A lot of docs go, I want it perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. It needs to be authentic.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. And just touching on consistency as well. Chris, would you say, like, with consistency, your podcasters seem to always be around the same length, right? When we're talking about consistency.
Yeah, I try to pretty much keep my podcasts between 15 and 20 minutes max, just because I know people have shorter attention spans. But I'll give you an example. Like same with Joe Hudak, like we try to keep them around 20 minutes usually, but we did one episode that was like 45 minutes long, and it was based all around vaccines, all the time that Jimmy Kimmel was, posting his stuff, or not posting, but you know what I mean? Like when he did that whole thing on his show with vaccinations and calling parents out that don't vaccinate, morons and all that. So we did a podcast. We capitalized on that opportunity, and we did this podcast. And to date, it's Joe's highest downloaded podcast. I think it was like 45 minutes, but it had like over 300 downloads the very first day. Wow. That's crazy. And it's had like something like 700 or 800 downloads since then, but 300 the first day. Talk about getting exposure. You know what I mean? And like, it was awesome.
But how many times do you sit down, viewers, listeners, whoever's out there right now, how many times do you sit down and you actually have a chance to sit down and talk to, like, share your message with 300 people? Now take that and do that, multiply that each day. Now, we have had some questions regarding, Aaron actually has a question. What is the initial time commitment to get up and running? Joe Hudak, Dr. Joe Hudak was up in 9 days. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah, 9 days.
Yeah. For you, how long was it for you?
It was like 10 days. It was like, it was under 2 weeks. It was like 10 or 11 days. And I think actually, you know what? It was like 11 days or something. Joe was a little bit shorter because by that time I had it figured out. So,
yeah,
cause I produced Joe's stuff for him, and I get on and I interview him every week and we do the pod. So I did it all for him.
Okay, so podcast resources. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. I know everyone's a busy doc, right? We got to get back to work, seeing patients. So podcast resources. Your mic. Chris uses the Yeti, so he upgraded a bit there. But your sound quality, I would say, on a Yeti is probably about an 8 out of 10. It's really good. What did you pay for your Yeti, Chris?
It was with tax. It was just shy of 140 with tax.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, Joe Criscola is like using, I think he's got like a $50 mic that he's using. And I actually like the sound of his mic better than the Yeti. I think he's using the Audio Technica. I think that's one of the ones he's using. But yeah,
that's what I'm on.
It's a cheaper microphone, but I actually like the sound of it better.
Yeah, I have the Audio Technica. That's what I'm on right now. And like I said, I've gone to a $350, $400 mic, and it's just because it picks up everything in the room. It's like it'll pick up a nose whistle. So like, I just find this one really great tone, inexpensive. I've seen it as little as as $40 on Amazon. Headphones, $20. You can get those on Amazon. Just order the whole package. These ones are just Sony off of Amazon. You do need a boom. And the reason that we use a boom or a mic stand is you do want to have the mic a certain distance from your mouth, and you want to keep it consistent. Otherwise, like you can see, like if I move away from the microphone, my voice quality changes. Pop filter is probably about $10. And what that does is it takes out clicks, pops, anything that would like the P sounds, the p-ps, and the wind noise. That makes a difference in terms of audio quality. And the reason I'm showing you this, docs, is because it is important. Like, if someone clicks onto your podcast and the audio quality is not so good, and I even had the doc mention this, they go, you know what, I love that podcast you did, but the audio quality was so bad. I just clicked, I couldn't even listen. So it does make a difference in terms of who's going to listen to your podcast too, and how long they'll listen. Here's recording and editing software. GarageBand is on Mac, and it's completely free. And there was an update. It was GarageBand 10. And so GarageBand 10.0, we've added, went through and added all of the tutorials. So we added another 6 or 7 video tutorials on how to use GarageBand 10.0. Audacity is for PC and Mac. It's free as well. And then there's an iTunes account for submitting to iTunes is free. It's not a huge investment. Okay, here's how it works. Here's what you want to know, right, Doc? Can you see that okay, Chris?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay, so here's what happens. You got your podcast. You create your podcast, which is essentially like what's called an MP3. So it's an audio file. You tag it. When you tag it, it actually uploads your artwork like this, and then it'll put a little bit of a display on it, or I should say some content like, a short comment as to what's on there, plus your name. So you're emblazing it, you're tattooing it with your logo, your brand. What you do is you then upload that audio file onto Libsyn. Libsyn is about $15 a month, and it's a podcast host. So now it's on Libsyn, and that takes, I think I can do that in about 60 seconds. I might even show you how it's done.
Super fast.
Yeah, it's really fast. Then as soon as you load it up to Libsyn, it automatically, you don't have to do anything, doctor. It automatically uploads to iTunes once you've submitted and been approved, and you only do that one time. It automatically uploads to your SoundCloud account if you want to do that. So I have listeners on SoundCloud, and it automatically goes onto Stitcher Radio, the other platform for listening. it goes automatically. You don't have to do anything. You do one step, create your podcast, upload it to Libsyn, boom, automatically it goes onto these different platforms. Now, here's the thing too, through Libsyn, you can actually even have it share onto Facebook, onto Twitter, all these different platforms that you can share and market your podcast. Like, there's so many angles on this, and we're just, again, like scratching the surface. Now, some docs might be sitting there going, okay, I don't have time to get the paperwork done. Like, I got 5 reassessments to get prepared for today, or mark x-rays. It's fine. With my training, I guarantee you can put your CA or your business office manager through this, and they would know how to do this so quickly. All you would have to do is know how to create your like the MP3. They can take care of everything else. They can do the sharing, right?
Yeah. And I was going to say, like, for example, Dr. Tabor Smith is starting a podcast for Genesis chiropractic software. And he and Brian Capro work together on some things. And Brian is, he's got a lot going on with the software company. So he asked Tabor, he said, hey, if I get this program from Ed, will you create the podcast for me? Tabor said, sure. Of course, Tabor charged a fee for that. But Brian just basically bought the program and then gave it to Tabor. And then Tabor's getting ready to launch. He just emailed me 2 nights ago saying, hey, I'm about ready to launch this thing. Can I call you and help you, walk me through the final steps of it, which is, all part of the support in the community as well. We can do that through email. And if I need to call somebody, I can do that. But for the most part, Tabor and I are like best friends. So he's, we talk to each other on a daily basis, but that's the point. You could give it to your CA. And they just watch the videos, and then boom, they're ready to go. And if they have a question, go to the community and say, hey, I'm getting ready to launch this. Like, I have this question, and then somebody will answer it.
Here's the thing too. The Master Circle. So they launched their podcast today. So that was completely through TCP podcast training program.
Nice.
And the entire I think it was about a week or 2 after I chatted with them, and they got on board the program, and I sent them a message and said, hey, do you need any help? And they're like, no. The program's solid. So I never had one communication with them, except I'm on their list. So I got an email the other day saying, hey, we're launching our podcast today. And so I'm excited. I mean, this is really exciting for me. It's very validating too, to see that, we are transforming, not only are we able to help support more chiropractors, we're able to, as a chiropractor, support our communities in terms of their health and their healing. So this is the power, man. And
again, that's the thing. Like, this is something I want to stress before we continue on, is that this is a brotherhood and a sisterhood. You know what I mean? Like, when you become a chiropractic podcaster, right now there's a small group of us. There's like, what, Ed, like less than 100?
Yeah.
Out of 75,000 chiropractors, there's 100. But you know what? It's the beginning of something really, really beautiful. And I promise you, in 6 to 12 months, everybody's going to be looking to podcasting. One of the things I like to do as a marketer is stay ahead of the curve and position myself in a new opportunity like this before anybody else gets there. There's less than 100. I think there's like 80 some people right now podcasting or about to launch a podcast.
Yeah.
And it's a tight knit group. You know what I mean? Like, we really support each other. When Dr. Jason Dean came out with his podcast and launched it this last week, which is Nothing But the Truth. It's like, he posted it. And I started sharing it. I was just like, hey, look, you got to listen to this. This is an amazing podcast. And that's what our community does, is it will, our community shares. Like, I've noticed this with chiropractors, and like, it boggles my mind that like, you can do something like for example, Dr. Joe Hudak did this whole podcast recently on I forget what it was called. It was basically some antibiotic toxicity type thing, right? And where this really commonly prescribed antibiotic is like killing people. So we did a podcast on it, and it did pretty well. We've got, I think there was about 180 downloads in the first couple of days or something like that. But I was kind of surprised that people outside the group, outside the community, weren't really sharing it too much. You know what I mean? Like, but our community of docs shared it. And I thought that was just absolutely awesome. And, you know, it's the community that helps us get the message out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Is getting people under care. That's the impact. I mean, we can talk all day about, you know, number of downloads and people we're affecting and getting information to people. But ultimately, that's what we're talking about, is getting people under chiropractic care, getting their nerve system clear.
That's what I wanted to tell you. Dude, I completely forgot. So Dr. Joe Criscola, right? He's one of my clients as well. So he did this podcast on, oh gosh, what was it? Seizures. So he did this podcast on seizures, right? So we ran this marketing campaign for him, and he ended up, somebody saw some of the stuff we were doing on social media, and they decided to go look him up. So they went and looked him up online, and they found his seizure podcast, and they ended up scheduling an appointment and said, hey, I have seizures that I suffer with, and I saw that that you help people with stuff like that. So I want to schedule an appointment. And he sent it to me. He's like, oh my God. He's like, dude, look at this. And I was like, wow. I'm like, that's the cool thing. Like, they went and looked him up, but these podcasts are ranking in the Google search engine. And I think that's a really important point to make, that they're ranking in the Google search engine. So when people are searching for you, or they're searching a condition, there's a strong possibility that they're going to find your podcast. And when they do, they get to hear that unique message in here. Because if someone has seizures and they see that you've done this podcast on seizures, they're going to listen to that. You know what I mean? They're going to have an interest in that and be like, okay, well, what do I, what's this guy have to say? Or what's this girl have to say? And boom, they're going to listen, and then they're going to schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's a great point. I'm going to do another quick screen share and just show docs how powerful this is. Let's go here. Okay, so you should be able to see my Google. And so let's put in someone who's been on the show, Tony Palermo. So here we go. So what's this? Number 4 is his episode. So, Dr. Tony Palermo, I mean, he's pretty much everywhere in the space of chiropractic. So we have his website. We have a couple, he has his Facebook page, but number 4 or 5 here on page 1 of Google is his podcast on my show. And if we go down a little further, here it is. Here's another one. So that's the power. See, how powerful is that, Doc, if your podcast is showing up on page 1 of Google? So they click on it, and then what they're going to do is they're going to be able to actually head over to your website, right? So people can now find Dr. Tony Palermo through my website just based on that link. And that is the power.
Yeah, I was going to say, and something else too, and you guys got to remember this, that when people are looking for a chiropractor, right? A lot of times, like it doesn't matter if it's a chiropractor or if it's a plumber or they're looking for an electrician, a lot of times they go to social media and they'll say, hey, does anybody have, a good chiropractor? Like, I need one. And someone will say, oh yeah, like you should, Dr. Ed Osborne, he's my chiropractor. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to go to Google and they're going to type in something like Dr. Ed Osborne reviews, or Dr. Ed Osborne scam, right? Because they want to know if you're going to scam them, sort of thing. So, but they're going to type that in, and then how cool is it when they search your name and you've got podcasts there for them to actually listen to and connect with you versus just a website?
No, absolutely. I'm just going to post that link on the chat again, just to make sure that everyone can see the offer, but I'm also putting the link to the page where you can get onto the program or enrollment. So for docs, and they may have to head over there.
There is a question there that says, Dr. Amy, do you make offers on your podcast for new patients? Yeah, absolutely. Like what I do with Dr. Hudak and Dr. Tafuri and some of the other guys that I'm doing this stuff with, at the end of every podcast, I'm like, so if people are listening right now, Doc, and they want to get a hold of you and they want to contact you, what's the best way for them to do that? And what they'll do is they'll give out their phone number. They'll give out their website address. Or if they have an offer going on in the office that week, they'll say, yeah, as a matter of fact, right now we have this offer where you can come in for a consultation exam for X amount of dollars or whatever it might be. So, or for free or whatever it is you want to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it is that easy. And we've really been focusing a lot on the marketing and the effective podcasting. I just want to show docs, and hopefully you can see this, Chris. Can you see my
Yeah.
GarageBand?
Yes, sure
Right.
can.
I'm going to show you. This is actually an episode that I had edited, and I want to just show doctors how easy this is to actually record on, record on GarageBand. So you go down to the bottom here. You can see you can actually take your playhead, move it around, but you go down here and you hit the red button. That means record. The Chiropractic Philanthropist, episode 111. And I hit the space bar to stop.
Nice.
Bam, done. It's that easy.
Super simple.
Yeah. And here's the thing too, is now once I have, and so let's say I want to actually bring it, like say I have my interview and I want to add it to this. So all I do is you can't see off my screen, but I'm going to take that off of my desktop and I just drag it in and I add the audio. So that's how you can add audio. So I have my intro, I have my audio, you put your outro, then you go up here and you go share, you go export to disk, you go export, and now it will export it to your, and you'll name it, and it will export it as an audio file onto your desktop. From there, we're just going to put it into Libsyn after it's tagged. That easy. It's not difficult, Doc. So that's just one example. Maybe I'll head into my Libsyn account and just show docs a little bit about Libsyn. That's often the question I get is, it's like 10, 15 bucks a month. It's not a huge investment. And uploading to Libsyn is actually really, really simple. Okay, start over. Here's my Libsyn account. And we'll go back to the Chiropractic Philanthropist. So yeah, as I mentioned, you can actually have a quick stats. You can see how your podcast is doing on that day. It's 1 p.m. in the afternoon. We're at just over 300 listens. I didn't put out a podcast today. So you can see like when you put a podcast out, your listeners will dive in. So it kind of goes up and down. But to add an episode, you just simply go to content, add an episode. And then you would select your media file. So that's where you select your audio file and you would go upload. And hopefully I didn't, there we go. You would put in your title, and this is all just copy and pasted, by the way. You just put in your title, put in a brief description, upload your artwork real quick. And so this would take me maybe 2 or 3 minutes, probably the same for you, eh, Chris?
Yep.
Yeah, and then you can post it a message to Facebook, because mine goes right to Facebook, and you would just push publish. That's it. Once you've done this, you're approved by iTunes, it will automatically go to iTunes. It'll automatically go to Stitcher, and it will automatically go to SoundCloud when you sign up for all of those. And again, even your submission to iTunes takes less than 60 seconds. So, but the waiting, so you'll just wait until they get back to you with the approval code. Anything you want to add to that, Chris?
Yeah, there's 2 spots left. So just letting everybody know. But no, yeah, that is super. It's so super simple. And what I love is that with those stats, not only can you see like you can look at your stats and you can see, okay, which episode was most popular, right? And then if that episode was really popular, you might want to consider doing more episodes based around that particular topic.
Great.
You can also see where your podcast, how many different countries or different regions around the world that your podcast is being heard. And I like to use that for marketing purposes. So with Dr. Joe Hudak, for example, we did a nice little infographic and put it out there and said, the journey to wellness now being heard in 14 countries around the world. Mm-hmm. So what does that do for him? That makes him look like an authority, an expert. I mean, he is, right? But it gives it, when people that don't know him see that. It's kind of like almost having your own book. Everybody talks about when you write a book, you become this instant authority. Podcasting is no different, especially when you're putting the logo to iTunes on your infographics that you're posting to Facebook. You could put a picture of yourself and then put the little logo of iTunes and now in iTunes. You know what I mean? What does that do? It creates celebrity status, creates authority. People start to they become more attracted to you because you're famous.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's actually, while we're in Libsyn, let's go ahead and actually share one of these, like how you could do that directly. Let's go to a previously published episode, and we'll just go here. And what we grab is actually this called, it's a direct download URL. This is what you would either text or what you would place inside. Can everyone see that screen?
Yes.
You can see, okay. You can see it's playing then?
Yes.
Cool. Now, the key thing I want everyone to realize is it played automatically. Like I didn't have to click on it to play it, it played automatically. So if this is your Twitter followers, as soon as they get this and they click on it, it plays automatically, right? As soon as you send it via text message, as soon as they click on that link, it plays automatically. Like there's no waiting period. It starts playing right away. So it's really powerful education tool. I mean, if you want to connect with patients and send them a health message, maybe it's something like, maybe if you want to record your new patient lecture, you got this challenge where you can't get your patients to your new patient lecture. Well, send it to them via podcast, and they can listen to it on their mobile in their car. Mm-hmm. It's an invaluable education tool as well. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes, and one quick thing, I think you'll probably show them here on this page. Still 2 spots left for the course, but there's out of the 6, there are now 4 spots left for the full production.
Wow, I'm excited. Because, with the full production too, Chris, and I'm excited, we get to work with people one-on-one, like connect with them on a weekly basis.
Yeah, for sure.
Fun stuff, man. So, so if everyone can see this page, this is the page you want to direct to. Go ahead, hit the link on the right-hand side. The program is going to go up to $14.99. Here's why, because I spoke to Janet Switzer. Janet is the one who sold 500 million books for Jack Canfield. Okay. And when I interviewed her, I got off the phone and I asked her, I said, here's what I'm doing. What do you think? And she goes, it's not scalable. She said, you're not charging enough money. And she's right. I mean, it's a lot of energy. It's a lot of work. And I love chiropractic, but I love my family and I love time and taking care of my own healing too. So we have to raise the price. It's going up to $14.99 very soon. Today, it's $7.25. When we originally launched, it was $6.25. But normally right now we're offering it at $9.99. So the first module that you get is completely on creative. There's over 11 videos in there. None of the videos are more than 6 or 7 minutes. They are to the point. Everyone who I meet who goes through this program says, I love that it's no fluff, no BS. You give us what you need, nothing more, no hype. So number 2 is all about the tech. Now there's over 30 videos in the tech, but here's the thing. You only need a certain number of those tutorials. So for example, if you're editing only strictly on GarageBand, you don't need all the ones for Audacity and things like that. We also are going to take you through the business and the marketing of how to get guests. I'm going to give you all of my contracts, all of my forms for sponsorship, everything I've used. Wouldn't you want to know what I wrote in that email that got Jack Canfield on my show? Well, I give it to you. Okay. So all of that stuff is there. Even I was on the Chris, I was speaking to you the other day, remember? And you're like, how did you get that? Yeah. I'm like, hey, it's on my program. So here's what docs are saying. Ryan French, he jumped on board right away. Dr. Ryan French is probably the most successful chiropractor in Canada today. Amazing. He says if BJ were alive today, I am confident he would already be dominating Facebook, podcasts, and YouTube. He says Dr. Osborne has taken this material, turned it into an easy play-by-play. I'm a no fluff kind of guy. Again, I don't have a lot of time for just basically anything but giving you the goods. So I could play Chris's video here, but I got the real thing actually on the show today. So on the webinar, Dr. Laura, she loves the training as well. She's in, again, all of these docs who are in this, they're in various stages of production. If you want to really rocket your production, you want to make sure you do the production program with Chris and I. But if you've got time, there's no rush. Go through the tutorials on your own time. You have lifetime access and all of the updates because things I guarantee are going to be changing. I am so proud of what Dr. Carey Sigafus has done. He is doing an amazing thing for our profession, providing that, Jim Sigafus's materials and trainings. And he's doing it also through a podcast. He's a gentle soul. He's just an amazing person. I've never met him personally, but we've connected via podcasting and through our program. I would love to play the whole video for you today, but we're running a little long and I want to answer questions at the end. Dr. Joe Criscola, he's killing it on his podcast. Got a message from him today. Dr. Joe Hudak, maybe he'll buy another turbocharged Jaguar once he
right.
once he surpasses 30,000 downloads. He's killing it. I love his content and seeing what he's doing on social media. Dr. Jason Jones, wow, I got to tell you, I mean, he's really up the game. And this is the beautiful thing is, I think it's made me actually go out, and I never would have approached those celebs had it not been for other chiropractors pushing me to go, okay, what else can I do? Because he's up the game. He says this training is a complete 10 out of 10. And I consider like we're all like a family. We're all a movement. Even Tabor. I was supposed to actually, I emailed Tabor today. I'm like, Tabor, he was supposed to interview me today for his podcast. And I'm like, I don't know how I did this. I have a webinar today. But he's going to be actually on my show on the Chiropractic Philanthropist. Again, this is now Tabor and yourself, even Chris. I mean, you have huge amount of influence in our profession. So I love the fact that we're really getting the message of how podcasting and audio can transform our profession. We have over tons of grads who are in the top of iTunes. We're going to give tons of bonuses with the program. So we're going to give over $1,038 in bonuses. Well, Chris, why don't you talk a little bit about your teacher appreciation program? I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just it's a cash cow. It really is. I basically show them step by step how to get into their local schools and how to do teacher appreciation events all year long. Like not just in the month of May when it's teacher appreciation month, not just when it's like back to school time in like September, like all year long. So really, really valuable program. One of my most successful programs. And I want to give it away for anybody that signs up to become a part of our chiropractic podcasting community through TCP.
And I honestly, I didn't even know of this program until you offered it. But if I was, approaching schools and that would be my exact niche in my practice, my ideal patients, I would be all over that.
One of my docs actually last year did $300,000 in teacher appreciation events alone. So that just kind of puts it in perspective.
No doubt. And I mean, you're giving it away. It's incredible. Thank you. And how about the second bonus you got there, Chris?
Yep. My Get to Know Chiropractic viral videos. So these are videos, there's 28 of them. You can upload them to Facebook and educate your following about chiropractic. Each video is about a minute to a minute and a half long. As you can see, they're cartoon style videos. And then there's also videos where the person is actually writing a message with a pen. So when people are watching it, they have to watch it and read it, and they want to see what the message is going to be. So it really engages a lot of people. Plus, you can upload them to YouTube and search engine optimize them for more exposure through SEO.
Oh, Chris, I think all 10 of the programs are gone.
Okay.
So we're gonna keep going. We'll take on at least one or two more people. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So don't worry, Doc. If you want to get in on the TCP training, go ahead and do that. And I guarantee Chris and I'll take care of you. So here's my bonuses. So I'm going to throw in my Common Sense ROF. Actually, I was speaking to a doc yesterday. He got my Common Sense ROF. He was going through it. He said he loves it.
That's another thing that you got to remember about podcasting. As your show becomes more and more popular and more people are tuning in your community, you become that authority figure, which means that if you want to, you have the ability to charge higher fees because now you're in demand.
Yeah. Yeah. I literally especially when I was doing radio, and I used to pay $1,200 a month for a 30-minute radio show. And it's not evergreen either. And people would come in from that and they would they would literally sit across from you like wide-eyed deer in the headlights kind of thing, like, because you're the celebrity. It's the exact same thing with podcasting. Exact.
Right.
So creating Facebook ads that convert. I take you through the ins and outs of creating Facebook ads that convert people who are, or funnel traffic from Facebook right onto your Facebook fan page to increase your likes, but also to convert those people into new patients in different ways that you can create offers for them as well. I kind of demystified how to use Facebook ads, and I have that for you too. That's my gift. And yeah, special bonus, I'm going to throw in a podcast bumper. So Chris and I were talking about this last night. Chris is like, what's a bumper? And so a bumper is basically, you know, a lot of podcasters will do bumpers. They'll actually have very successful podcasters do a bumper for them, which is basically a little snippet of about 20 seconds max of audio where they are endorsing that podcaster's show. So I'm going to give you your show an endorsement. That is my gift to you. And most most podcasters, like someone like a John Lee Dumas or a Lewis Howes, is charging anywhere from $600 to $1,200 for that 20-second spot. And so I'm going to do that for you. I'm going to throw it in for free once your podcast is up and ready. Okay, so the program, there's a couple different options. You can go ahead, click what makes no difference how you take care of it. But basically, it's normally $9.95. We're doing it for $7.25 on the one time. And that is a lifetime access, all updates, all support. You know, we'll get you up and running. You can do the 2-payment option, it's $800, or you could do the 3-payment option, it's $900. We also give you a 30-day no risk money back guarantee. Now, you might be sitting there, Doc, going, oh, you know what, I'm completely overwhelmed. And I'm going to let Chris talk a little bit more about the production element side of this than me, because he has the proof. He's been doing this for clients already. So Chris, do you want to tell them a little bit about, doctors, a little bit about the clients and the production?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Like, I mean, I totally see the value in podcasting. I tend to, you know, I like to keep up with 2015 marketing. And this is 2015 marketing. This isn't 2005. This isn't 1999. This isn't 2011. This is 2015. And my personal coaching clients, I like to keep them up to speed on everything that they're doing with their marketing, their practice. So when I first started podcasting, I was like, oh my God, like, and I was starting to see the results of like people tuning in and listening. I was like, oh my God, like my clients need to do this. So I approached these guys and I said, hey, look, like you guys need to start a podcast. Well, you know, there was the whole, I don't know if I have time for that. I don't know if I have the ability to come up with content on a regular basis and that sort of thing. And I was like, all right, you know what, dude, screw it. Like I'm doing your podcast for you because they're already paying me a very handsome monthly fee. So I was like, let's do this. I'll produce your podcast. I'll lay out the content for you. I'll come up with the questions for you. We'll do it interview style. I'll interview you. I'm the interviewer. You're the interviewee. You're the expert. And we'll do a podcast every single week. And all you have to do is show up for 20 to 30 minutes every week. And I'll record it on Skype. I'll ask you a series of questions. You answer them on behind the scenes. I'll edit it. I'll do all your artwork. I'll do the intros and outros to your podcast. I'll do everything because your message needs to be heard. And of course, they were just like, all right, let's do it. You know, at that point in time, it was like, it's not a time issue anymore. It's not, hey, I'm afraid of the tech issue. It's because, you know, it's like, I'm going to do it all for you. All you got to do is show up and be an expert. That's it. So I was telling Ed about this, and then some of my clients referred some other of their friends to me and said, hey, Chris will do a podcast for you. So why don't you contact him? He's doing my podcast. It's absolutely amazing. It's rocking. So next thing I know, I'm getting some emails say, hey, I heard you produce podcasts. So I told Ed, I was like, dude, like docs want podcast production. They want a podcast, even though, you know, some of them may feel like they don't have the time to do it on their own, but they're willing to work with somebody like me who's had experience in podcasting to help them produce their own podcast. So Ed was like, you know what? I think you're right. we should do that. We should offer a service. But here's the thing, it's time consuming, like on our end. Like, it's not like, you know, we record and then we upload like immediately. It takes a little bit of time, especially when you're working with different people. If it's your own podcast, not that much time involved. But when you've got 4 or 5 different people that you're working with, it can be a little bit time consuming. So we decided to limit it to just 6 people. So we can take on 6 people to do a podcast for. 2 of those are already gone. So there's only 4 positions left, by the way. So if you want to do a podcast, but you're like, I don't know if I have the time or the ability to come up with content, all you have to do is hire Ed and I to do it for you. And all you have to do is show up and be an expert and answer some questions on a given topic.
Yep. And I mean, yeah, we make it as simple as possible, and then you can focus on what you do best. And that's just to work with patients in your office too, right? Like to use your hands. And I want to thank, Jordan, Dr. Craig, Dr. Vanda's already in the program. She's working on it already.
Awesome.
From today. So that's just a couple docs that I can see here. I've jumped in. My email's a little bit slow in catching up. Chris, you got any parting words for docs?
No, well, just this. You need to be podcasting, not just for yourself, but for chiropractic. I mean, like Ed showed you in the beginning, all those TCP graduates that are in new and noteworthy. Imagine the top 50 spots being filled with chiropractic podcasts. That is absolutely huge. There are millions of people that listen to podcasts in this country every single day. John Lee Dumas, huge podcaster, to date has over 9 million downloads of his podcast, Entrepreneur on Fire. So there are millions of people listening. So imagine what it would do for chiropractic if we all just work together. I think a lot of times docs sit back and they're like, well, I got to maybe try and calculate the ROI on this. Is anybody really going to listen? And all this stuff like that. It's like, no, you know what? Believe me, it'll come. You're not going to do your first podcast and you're going to have like a flood of new patients. That's not going to happen. I'm just being realistic. But when you're putting it out there on a consistent basis over and over again, the ROI is going to be there and it's going to be absolutely huge. But in the meantime, you're serving chiropractic at a much higher level. Like for me, like chiropractic saved my daughter's life. I don't know if I'm not going to go into all the details on it. You can go to YouTube and just type in a chiropractic miracle story and watch the video for yourself. But chiropractic saved my daughter's life. So my purpose in chiropractic is much, much bigger than what most people think. Like I want to reach that's one of the reasons I got into teaching marketing. My goal is to help chiropractors see more people, not just for their benefit, but for the benefit of chiropractic. And that's what podcasting can do. You have the ability to get your message out there, to let people hear your excitement, your enthusiasm for chiropractic, your anger at the medical profession, whatever emotion that you're going through, people have the ability to actually hear it and feel it and have it resonate with them. And when you do that, game over. I mean, when there's no other chiropractor in your town podcasting, but you're the one podcasting and getting your message out, game over, man. I mean, you're going to have a huge following.
And I mean, just even to touch on ROI, Chris, I mean, as a practicing chiropractor, what I found in the last 4 or 5 years is that it's really difficult to measure ROI because there were so many things that people will touch before they come into your office. And that's how we described it in our office as we measured ROI. It's like, what was the last thing they touched? Because some people will come in, they're like, well, it was the website. I saw you in the Gazette, like our ad, our newspaper. I heard you on the radio. Like, which do you pick? Like, how do you put a number on that? So it's the same with your podcast. You just have to be everywhere. It's called total market domination. Okay, so that when something becomes oversaturated or something no longer works, it doesn't mean that the new patient flow turns off. Okay, so that's why it's so important to be a podcaster. But the other thing is too, it's just, there's been nothing new in terms of I don't no offense here, Chris. I know you do amazing marketing, and actually, Instagram is new, by the way. So maybe I should say that there's so little new things and ways that you can market your practice out there in chiropractic in the last 10, 15 years. This is completely untapped. We're just scratching the surface. It's like it frustrates the heck out of me too that as chiropractors we see it as, okay, well, I have to see the return on it, and it's bigger than that. This is about, again, it's about the movement. It's about taking us from a marginalized profession of 5% of the population and really, really starting to impact people. Because, the stuff I see these days, it worries me. And it, not just for myself, but for my kids, because they're the ones who are going to inherit, this, I don't even know what to call it, this healthcare,
thing,
paradigm.
monster. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's like when chiropractic gets to a point where it's seeing 20% of the population, that tipping point, 18%, whatever it is, right? Everybody benefits from that.
Yeah.
It's not like one chiropractor is going to get to see all of that, right? So it's like everybody benefits. Well, how do we do that though? We do it through things like this: posting on Facebook, doing a podcast, uploading something to Instagram, sending out an email, sending out a text message, doing a dinner workshop. It's all these things combined. And like you said, okay, so they heard your podcast and came in. Okay, well, they got, that was the ROI. Well, was it? Like, did they see you on Facebook first and then went and looked you up and found your podcast and then came in, so the podcast got you the ROI? No, it's like what you said, it's total market domination, and not enough chiropractors are doing that. Grant Cardone talks about that. You don't want to compete, you want to freaking dominate. And that's how you do it. You've got to get active. You've got to get to work. You've got to hustle, and you got to get yourself out there so that people are seeing you absolutely freaking everywhere, whether it's, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, email, dinner workshop, new patient orientation, whatever it might be. You've got to get yourself out there. And podcasting is another element that, like I said, in 6 to 12 months, you're going to see a lot of chiropractors doing it, a lot. Yeah. This is thing, and you have the ability to get in before everybody else.
And what is one lifetime patient worth, in your office? Like if you look at your PVA. So, this program is really just pennies, considering that it's not a monthly subscription. It's a full lifetime access. So yeah, it's, I think that's a perfect wrap up, Chris. And thanks for taking the time. I know we went a little long today.
Yeah. Yeah. An hour and 45 minutes. Hey, man, we wanted this to be about 45 minutes. I gotta for those of you still hanging with us, I can see that we still have people hanging out there. Thank you. That means a lot that you've, took almost 2 hours out of your day to be part of this.
Hey, well, the passion shines through. So keep charging, everyone. And thanks so much for getting on the broadcast today.